She grinned as aliens shrieked that no being could ever withstand the storm dome. The Academy's most brutal chamber was built. As punishment, a vast sphere of unending lightning storms, shrieking gales, and acidic rainfall that corroded even armored plating. No trainee had lasted beyond a minute before collapsing. When faculty chose Mira, the sole human exchange student, for trial entry, many saw it as an elegant execution. From high galleries, rows of scaled, feathered, and crystalline faces crowded the viewing panes, eager to watch her crumble. Professors whispered bets, debating how long her fragile frame would last before the storm consumed her. Yet Mira only pulled her drenched jacket closer and clutched a small satchel. Weaponry, no exo-armor, not even a shield. Just a cloth bag holding soil, seeds, and a tiny spade that looked like a child's toy. She mocks the test, hissed a Sherlin, its crystal hide scattering arcs of lightning flashing across the dome. Humans think gestures mean survival. She brought food for the storm, croaked a feathered carol, wings tucked tight. Mira stepped onto the lift and descended into the chaos. The wind screamed at once, whipping her hair sideways. Acid hissed against her arms, but instead of burning through flesh, it left only faint welts. She crouched low, dragging her satchel. Blows. All right, she whispered, her voice stolen by the roaring gale. Time to plant. The gallery hushed. This environment had broken even the Academy's toughest cadets. Yet the human knelt, calmly scattering wet soil on the storm floor. Thunder cracked as lightning slammed nearby, rattling her bones, but she pressed seeds into earth with stubborn care, a vine, a flower, a stalk of grain. Each she planted as if in a quiet meadow rather than a killing cage. She's gardening, someone muttered, their disbelief sharp in the silence. For long moments nothing changed. Storms raged endlessly. Then the dome shifted. The ground shuddered, not from thunder, but from sprouting. The first seed split and forced a green shoot upward, climbing at impossible speed. Lightning struck, yet the stalk absorbed the energy, glowing with soft luminescence. The second seed burst, broad leaves that spread like shields, deflecting acid rain. Drops sizzled harmlessly off. Mira smiled and planted the rest. Impossible, growled Instructor Dribble, a veteran of storm trials. This field destroys all carbon forms. He halted as flowers bloomed, glowing violet beneath the storm light. Mira sat cross-legged in her growing garden. The storm bent around her circle, winds softened, lightning diverted to her plants. Chamber built for ruin now hesitated before creation. Cadets pressed claws and hands to the barrier, unsure if they were seeing trick or miracle. Why her? Whispered the cruel. We've mapped her biology. It shouldn't resist, she's human. Those are weeds, muttered Dravel. Plant them anywhere they thrive. The Sherlin sneered but held its tongue. Mira ignored the watchers. Soft tune from earth, unknown to alien ears, stroking glowing leaves as though comforting children. The garden spread with startling speed. Vines anchored against winds that had torn apart mechs. Flowers released fragrance so sweet it drifted through filters, reaching alien nostrils. Gas spread. 'Twas unlike anything in their databanks. She's altering the dome, someone gasped. And indeed the storm weakened. Lightning arced upward, pulled toward glowing stalks. Acid rain thinned, absorbed by wide leaves that rendered it harmless. Winds softened to breezes in Mira's circle. She plucked a leaf, studied it, and tucked it into her jacket like a keepsake. But the dome resisted. Sensors spiked. The storm surged again, lashing harder. bolts striking in frenzied bursts, winds howling. At last the audience leaned in. Certain collapse was near. Mira only laughed, her voice faint but defiant. "That all you've got?" she cried. Then pressed the final seed into soil. It cracked instantly, surging upward into a colossal tree that outshone lightning. Its branches stretched wide, catching bolts and channeling them harmlessly down. Its trunk fused into something no alien had seen, a fusion of earth, oak and storm, forged crystal. Beneath it Mira spread her arms, victorious not by destruction, but by creation. The gallery was speechless. Punishment had become sanctuary. The storm dome, once feared, now smelled of blossoms. Mira rested at the roots, smiling as lightning danced harmlessly above. Instructors called it a violation of physics. Cadets whispered the dome had yielded to her will. Mira gave neither an answer nor denial. She lingered inside the storm chamber, long past the required trial time, nurturing her garden as if it were a casual assignment. By the time the lift descended to retrieve her, vines had fastened to the plating, blossoms cast a soft glow, and the towering tree rooted deep into reinforced metal. When she finally stepped out carrying a bundle of leaves and stalks like trophies, the whole fell silent. Every gaze followed her, not with ridicule now, but with the uneasy curiosity reserved for something dangerous and strange. Mira walked past them quietly, dripping water, smelling of flowers, her satchel swollen with fresh samples. "Explain," barked Instructor Dravel, his crystalline body sparking faintly with trapped lightning. "That dome was forged to destroy. It cannot sustain." Mira tilted her head, meeting his glare steadily. "You-shaped storms to break things," she replied. "But storms also feed. Lightning gives energy. Rain brings water. Wind spreads life. I only planted what was ready to grow." Dravel bristled, words stuck, while cadets traded uneasy looks. To them the dome had always meant punishment, a symbol of failure. Watching a human transform it into sanctuary shattered the Academy's beliefs about survival itself. Rumors spread like fire in the days that followed. Some claimed she'd smuggled engineered seeds resistant to acid. Others swore she carried a hidden shield device. A few whispered the storm had bent to her will. None of the theories eased their unease. The storm dome had once proven alien supremacy, now it stood as a reminder of one human who smiled in its fury and coaxed life from ruin. Mira herself ignored the whispers. Spent long hours in the Academy lab, cataloging samples, testing how the plants stored lightning, how leaves absorbed acid, how roots drank it as if 'twere rain. Professors lingered at doorways, watching under the pretense of correcting her methods. One evening, when the halls were quiet, a trio of cadets appeared. The crystalline Sherlyn, the feathered Cruel, and a broad-shouldered aquatic Dreth stood awkwardly at the door. "We want to see it," the Sherlyn said stiffly. "The dome is sealed, but you can open it." Mira wiped her hands and nodded. The next day she secured permission for controlled viewing. The dome itself had already changed. Lightning clustered around the tree, feeding its glowing limbs. The acid rain thinned, absorbed by lush foliage. The wind still howled but bent harmlessly around the garden's circle. The alien cadets followed her in tense. The Dreth hissed as droplets burned its scales, until Mira handed it a leaf. The sting vanished instantly, gills flaring in surprise. The Cruel spread its wings and found the current lifted rather than slammed it down. The Sherlyn touched the trunk, jolting as a pulse of lightning shot through its body, only to fade, harmlessly, resonating like a chord in crystal. It accepts us, the cruel breathed. Mira shook her head. No, it isn't about acceptance. It's about making space for life where others see only ruin. Storm isn't an enemy, it's energy. Just never asked it to create. Word of their visit traveled quickly. Soon cadets from dozens of species sought entry, each leaving with stories of how the plants responded uniquely to them. The Academy reluctantly scheduled tours, masking it as ecological research. All knew it remained Mira's dome. Rival instructors grumbled that one Earth girl overturning their harshest trial undermined tradition. Others argued it revealed blind spots in centuries of teaching. Meanwhile her garden grew. The single stalk of earth grain spread into golden rose waving in artificial winds. The blossoms crossbred with alien seeds pulsing faint colors beneath stormlight. The great tree stretched higher, its crown brushing the dome's ceiling. Lightning hammered it so hard that the Academy itself shook, yet it only shone brighter, humming like a living beacon. But not all were pleased. A faction of senior cadets, those who had built their status on enduring the storm, saw her success as insult. To them the dome was proof of dominance through suffering, not a garden born from defiance. And Mira had turned it into sanctuary, robbing them of their measure of pride. One evening while she tended seedlings, beneath the tree, shadows gathered. Alien cadets entered the dome storm, winds curling around them, held training weapons charged with lightning, energy siphoned from the air. This place was never meant for peace, one growled. You've weakened our Academy. We'll burn your weeds and restore the dome. Mira did not rise. She pressed her palm gently to the soil where sprouts pushed through. If you choose to fight, that's yours, she said softly. But understand, the storm no longer answers you. The cadets sneered and advanced. The dome itself rumbled, lightning collecting in the branches of the immense tree. Mira watched calmly, her garden bracing not with fear but with quiet certainty that growth could prove stronger than ruin. The six spread out arcs of energy, flickering along their bodies, drew on native strengths. The Shirleen's crystal, fists sparking, the Cruel's wings, snapping wide to shape wind, the Dretha's hydro gauntlets pulling mist from acid vein. They expected her to flee or beg. Instead, she stood serenely beneath the luminous canopy, hands folded as though greeting pupils rather than challengers. Destroy the weeds, one snarled, and they charged. Lightning spears split the air, wind blades howled, acid pellets spattered, all converging on the lone human. But before they struck, the garden answered. Vines lashed upward, blocking blows with living shields. Broad leaves drank the acid, releasing it as clean water. The towering tree pulsed, drawing lightning through its trunk and channeling it harmlessly into soil. Mira stood. The attackers faltered, not at her defense, but because their storm-born powers were diverted away, as if the dome itself had shifted allegiance. One leapt high, crystalline fist aimed at Mira's skull. The tree bent, catching the strike with a branch, scattering sparks that lit its blossoms. Mira finally moved. Kneeling, she pressed both palms to earth and the garden surged. Vines coiled around their ankles, firm yet gentle. Flowers bloomed at their faces, releasing fragrance that soothed rage into calm. The Drethas summoned mist condensed into glowing droplets that nourished leaves. Cruel tried to fly, but currents bore it back softly to ground. The Shirlin strained, against vines until lightning poured down, not to destroy but to illuminate its crystalline body in radiant light. Why resist? Mira asked quietly. Storm can be more than punishment. Be growth. It belongs to life, not to you, not to me. The cadets gasped, their fury ebbing. They had come to scorch her garden yet now stood within a living system that fed on their aggression. Slowly Mira released them. Vines unwound, flowers folded, the trees glow dimmed. A six stood shaken, then retreated silently. They never challenged her again. Word of the confrontation spread quickly. Some whispered the human had hidden power. Others claimed the dome itself had allied with her. But when professors pressed her, Mira only gave the same answer. She had planted seeds, tended them, and refused to see destruction as the only path. Over time, the storm dome ceased to be punishment. It became a place of study. Cadets of every race observed how vines grounded lightning, how acid turned to dew, how winds once crushing now carried pollen. Courses were rewritten, shifting from endurance and suffering to balance and adaptation. The Academy's oldest traditions changed because one human refused to treat a storm as prison. Mira's garden expanded until it covered half the dome. The great tree stretched to the ceiling, its canopy glowing with every strike. Beneath it, cadets sat together, exchanging lessons, not rivals. Struggling to survive but explorers. Redefining survival through creation. Years later, the Storm Dome was no longer feared. It was honored as the Academy's heart. Instructors brought every new class there first, pointing to the tree and telling them of the human who entered with nothing but a bag of seeds. Mira herself eventually departed, her studies complete, but the garden lived on, self-sustaining, ever-adapting. Generations of cadets walked its paths, learning truths no book had written. Visitors from across the galaxy came, and the Academy's students told them the same words that had become legend. A human planted this, and with those words, every visitor understood humanity was not only a species that endured storms. It was one that could transform storms into gardens.